The past 3 weeks have seen a wave of political events sweep across Nigeria, from the presidential to the governorship and state houses of assembly elections. Good news is that 26 out of 29 states that took part in the elections had winners announced by the resident electoral commissioners for those states. Of the remaining 3 states, Abia, Imo, and Taraba State will be having supplementary elections within the next 48 hours. And all things being equal, INEC will have the results collated and announced in due time. This time, many hope the incident of ballot box snatching, fake PVCs, or even deaths recorded in those areas previously will not happen again. Hello and welcome to Roadmap. I am Gimba Umar. Call it a major twist in the political, serene, and you won't be wrong. President Goodluck Jonathan sacked the Inspector General of Police, Suleiman Abba, and appointed Arisi, who was directed by the President to start work immediately. Not so quick, says lawyer and human rights advocate Mr. Femi Falana. He said the sack of Suleiman Abba is unconstitutional and contravenes Section 216, subsection 2 of the 1999 Constitution, which states that before removing the IGP from office, the President shall consult the Nigerian Police Council. And since the council includes the 36 states of the Federation and the governors, whom he said were not consulted, then Mr. Abba's sack is null and void. Well, we also know that the People's Democratic Party, the PDP, and the All Progressives Congress, the APC, have constituted separate committees that will see to the successful handover process on the 29th. They are being headed by Pius Ayin Pius for the PDP and Timothy Silva for the APC. Our focus is on the transition to a new government in Nigeria and the handover process. We'll be speaking to 2 distinguished guests, Chief Richard Akinjide, the former Attorney General of the Federation, and Mr. Femi Falana, a senior advocate of Nigeria. Well, that's coming up shortly after this break. Stay with us. Well, it seems as a final lap before the home stretch as power changes hand in Nigeria after 16 years of governance by the PDP. General Muhammadu Buhari and Yemi Osinbajo will become the number 1 and 2 citizens of the country on May 29th. Well, the expectations by Nigerians are high, no doubt, and the key word here is expectations. And in my first 2 interviews, I started off by asking Chief Richard Akinjide, my guest, what the handing over power to the opposition means to the people of Nigeria.
I want to thank you so much indeed, Chief Richard Akinjide, for coming on the show, Roadmap. I want to start by asking you just a few questions. As you know, Nigeria is going through a transition period, and as a matter of fact, on the 29th, the handover date will be, and the change of hand from President Goodluck Jonathan to General Muhammadu Buhari will happen. Tell us, how has your own experience, because you've seen administrations change hands, how has the experience been for you?
Well, I've been watching television, listening to radio, read magazines, read newspapers about this transition from one party to another party, from one government to another government. And may I tell you straight away that I just laugh and laugh and laugh, because I've not seen real depth in the analysis. Many of them are too shallow. I will give you 2 critical examples, and that is China and India. China is the biggest country in the world when it comes to population, and it's the 2nd richest in the world. If you take America as number 1 and China as number 2. But in terms of size, India is the 2nd biggest in the world.
Like you mean like next to China, right?
Next to China. You have China as number 1, the biggest, and India next door as number 2. And paradoxically, China is a communist country and is doing extremely well. It's the 2nd best country in the world. if you take United States as number one. And also paradoxically, India is also doing extremely well. But the irony is that China is communist and India is an ideal democracy. So how do you analyze that? How do you explain that? The communist country is doing well. I mean, you cannot tell me that China is not doing well. China is doing extremely well. You can also not tell me that India is not doing well. India is doing extremely well.
Nigeria is also doing well.
So I will go back to Nigeria. So you have this dichotomy of China, communists doing extremely well. India, democracy doing extremely well. And the populations one after the other. How do you explain that? Well, let me tell you straight away that what is critical is the character of the leaders. It's not the system you operate. You might operate the system of democracy in the American system, in the British, in the French or German, and not do well. And you must also do them and do extremely well. So don't pin the result, the consequences on what they are operating. You must fix the consequences on the character of the people performing the system. If Buhari comes and does well and is vice president and they do well, it's their style, it's their character. And if they fail, it's their character, it's their style. So you should be extremely careful not to jump to judgment, not to jump to conclusion. My prediction is that they might do well and they might do badly. Because in my judgment, China is doing extremely well and India is doing also well. But I also say America is doing extremely well, and these are large countries. So I will reserve my judgment, my final judgment, until I see their performance.
Do you expect a change in the thinking of Nigerians, in the thinking of this new administration, such that there is an overall progress in this entity called Nigeria?
I cannot give you an answer to that as yes or no. You see, I mean, I've not seen their real policy. How are they going to solve the power problem, the water problem, education problem, road problem, and so on and so forth. So the consequences are too enormous. And the character of the North, I mean, let's face it, is quite different from the character of many of the Southerners. And how are they going to operate?
Is this a source of concern for you?
Serious one. Serious one. One, education is very critical. I mean, if you are not educated, how can you make progress? If you live in the Stone Age and you are operating a modern system, how can you make progress? So you've got to be very, very careful in making your judgment. Before you make your judgment, you must allow them to perform for a year or two, and then you can now sit down, analyze what you have done or failed to do, and then make a judgment. But I will not give any advance verdict.
Tell us how the celebrations of a transition like the one that we're about to witness in Nigeria, how was it celebrated in your time?
Well, Nigeria's situation was totally different. When I entered Parliament, I was in my 20 years of age, and it was the parliamentary system at that time. I mean, let's face it. And what we inherited was what British gave us, which was excellent. It was very good. But later on, the equation became different. It didn't work. I mean, anybody who bring parliamentary system to Nigeria now must be joking. You see, at that time, the prime minister comes from a constituency. He's elected, and he became prime minister in Lagos at that time. It didn't work, and therefore we met and decided that we should go to presidential system of government, which we have been practicing, and that has performed by far much better than what we were doing before. Anybody who talk of parliamentary system of government now must be joking, because you cannot make a person who won through a constituency to rule Nigeria compare from a person who won through election throughout the whole country. Those are totally different. I support the presidential system of government as they practice in America to parliamentary system of government as they practice in Britain. Even Britain is having problem. Britain is now having problem from Scotland. Even the Welsh to have their own laws and their own parliament. So you now have the Irish Parliament in the north of Ireland, you have Scottish in Edinburgh, you have one in London, and then you have another one in Wales. So the equation is very complex, and it's not simple at all. But the bad news is that we're not as educated as we like to believe. When we got independence from Britain, we were very, very educated. But the bad news is that the education is collapsing. The universities are not as good as they were before. The polytechnics are not as good as they were before. I admit that we have Nigerians who are very brilliant in parliament, in government, and in other areas of business. But we are now playing a game which is very complex and much more difficult. And in industry, what progress are we making?
But it is also said that Nigerians are a resilient set of people in this world. And your concerns on education, on electricity, on the total reform projects of this administration, how does that add up for you? Do you think that we're moving forward?
I will fold my hands. And I repeat, I will not give you an advance verdict. I like to see the quality of the cabinet they will have, the quality of the civil service they will use, and then the quality of leadership and the vice president. Those are very, very critical. The leadership is very important. He has to be leader of Nigeria, right from Calabar to Lagos, to Sokoto, to Maiduguri, to Kaba. But if you are a leader and you lead the country in the proper way, yes. But if you are a leader and you play the role of a third 11, there's no way you can succeed. Let them perform first. I mean, the price of oil has collapsed. About 50% of the price of oil has gone. And the majority of our revenue now, I think about 80% come from oil and gas. So I put my hand on my heart and see how the government is going to perform with this poor revenue base and also with enormity of debt. The newspaper, Vanguard, a few days ago published a big front page on the debt which is owned by the federal government and the various state governments in the country. That publication is alarming and is very disturbing. And I like to see how the coming government is going to handle that. You see, the first government in which I acted was Balewa's government when I was in Parliament before independence, and Parliament at the time of independence, and Parliament post-independence too. It was smooth. It was good. Even the Speaker of the Parliament at that time was an expatriate from London, and everything was fantastic. And a lot of the officials were even British at that time. Things went well. The change came when the military intervention was involved. Then the whole thing became tribal, and I don't want to go into that. We've gone through a civil war. It was very bad, it was very bloody, and I pray we will never have that again. But my prayer is that those students who are now graduates of polytechnics or who are teachers will now play the proper role that they should play. We try our best, and I'd like to give judgment to those who are succeeding us to see whether we did well or we did badly.
I want to thank you so much indeed, Chief Richard, for your time and your thoughts.